Hello viewers, this is Great Beef and welcome to my video which I'll be walking you through and setting up your mouse sensitivity in Destiny 2. For the tips and tricks I will be showing in this video will also be applicable in many other shooter games as well. I'm just mostly showing in Destiny 2 mainly for the game I'm mostly playing right now, but setting up on other shooter like games should be fairly similar as well. This video or guide is meant for both newcomers wanting to step into the PvP world or existing players wanting to get themselves set up for success in PvP related content. I will be walking through a few things which includes overall settings on your computer and mouse, and how I would recommend in setting up your basic sensitivity to start off with. This is a series of videos which I hope to start working on as a small personal project of mine. As playing with mouse and keyboard for over 5 years, I thought I would share my knowledge for anyone who is interested. If there are specific topics you would like me to cover and share, feel free to leave in the comments below, which they can be helpful in creating future videos and content for you. I am always happy to answer, of course, any general questions you do have in the comment section below, so feel free to leave a comment and I'll reply to you back as soon as possible. Alright everyone, so before we do get further started up here, we'll first need to set up your mouse settings to make sure that there's no interference in regards to setting up your sensitivity, and as well as setting up your mouse DPI if you do have a gaming mouse. So first thing we're going to set up here is just regards to your mouse settings. So simply go to the bottom left here to the Windows icon, right click it, and then go to settings. Now in the search feature, search up mouse, click on mouse settings, and then go to the top right here and then select additional mouse options. Now once the screen pops up here, click on pointer options. And there's two things we'll need to make sure here. So this most likely won't be changed unless it's something you have changed in the past, but basically this is kind of like your sensitivity, I guess, pretty much on your entire computer, or speed of your overall cursor. I would recommend setting this on 6 out of the 11 ticks, so basically count this from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Making sure this is on the 6th little tick here. So the next thing here, I would highly recommend that you do turn off, and just to make sure that it does turn off, because I feel like from any kind of like big Windows update, this is kind of automatically turned on for whatever reason. So this is basically your mouse acceleration, which you want to turn off. Mouse acceleration is basically where Windows kind of just assumes where your mouse cursor is moving and kind of helps you move it a bit more faster, essentially, I believe. Feel free to correct me in the comment section if that is incorrect, but basically, with that happening in game, you don't really want that happening when you're playing a shooter game. That kind of really messes up your aim. So just make sure that this option is deselected before we continue further. After that, you can close that out, and as well as this window. Now, next thing up is setting up your DPI. Your DPI is essentially, in short, basically your sensitivity of your overall mouse or cursor whenever you're just moving it on the computer outside of a game. So this will basically depend if you do have a gaming mouse that is set up. So if you don't have a gaming mouse set up, you can just skip the step. It's not too important. But if you do have a gaming mouse, I would highly recommend you take advantage of this. So you first want to go to let's go to your gaming mouse setup. For the gaming mouse I am using the Logitech G Pro Superlight. So let's go to my Logitech program here and open up my other screen. So I go to my mouse settings here, go to sensitivity DPI, and basically you may have a few other DPI set up here. I would kind of recommend getting rid of that unless you really are going to be going hybrid with your daily work or anything. But otherwise, for your DPI, I would probably recommend setting up within the 400 to 1000 range. Now, if you guys do want a further video on this, feel free to let me know, but otherwise I feel like there's so many others that can probably explain this a bit more better than I can. So your sensitivity, I recommend maybe 400 to 1000 DPI. If you do want to go over 1000 DPI, that's perfectly fine as well, but just for future, maybe just getting set up and later on for any other games in the future, I recommend maybe about 400 to 1000 DPI, but for me, I'm setting mine at 800 DPI at the moment. Now, before we do get started in regards to setting up your sensitivity, there's one thing we will need to point out, which you will need to select in the next correct session in this video, and that will be depending on the size of the mouse pad that you are currently using. So the two mouse pad sizes I'm currently referring to is currently a small mouse pad, which is basically your standardized desktop mouse pads, or a big gaming like mouse pad, which basically you can put your arm on. Depending on the size on the mousepad you are using, the way you set up your sensitivity will vary here. Of course, I would recommend to go with a decently sized mousepad where you can fit your arm on if possible, Reason why I am separating this is because I understand from my personal previous experience, not everyone has the best setup to put on a decently sized mousepad or simply cannot afford one as of right now. Because of this, I just want to open up different options for everyone to whichever mousepad or space you are using. You can still set this up. If you do happen to get a new bigger mousepad, you will need to refer back to this video here for the big mousepad setup, but otherwise from here, please select the correct session matching your mousepad size needing to be set up. Alright everyone, so now we are hopping in game for me to show you exactly how to set up your base sensitivity here. I do have a webcam on my mouse here as well, just to show a basic, more physical example as to how you should be moving your mouse. So for the first section here, we will be starting off with the big mousepad. Now, you don't need a big mousepad like mine that stretches to also support my keyboard. You generally just need one big enough that's usually allowed that you can at least fit your arm on, and you can at least make some arm movements, because with small mouse pads you're kind of limited to only wrist movement, which we'll move on to the next session. So we'll get started here with first the big mouse pad movement. So basically we're just going to start off with, for example, you just set up your game for the first time. I'm going to set my stuff back here by default because I have my config file saved to back up, so there's no need to worry. So for example, you set up your sensitivity by default 15, and with what you have set up here, as you can see, it is very, for me, it is very big for the DPI I do have set up here. So what we're going to do here first, so what you ideally want to do is that you want to be able to use your arm aim for most of your aim a lot of times, and your wrist aim for small adjustments usually. So your arm movement basically for any big adjustments, and when you're aiming down sights, for example, you want to generally be using only your wrist only. But because the sensitivity is way too big of a number and too sensitive, of course, we're going to basically lower it down here first. So generally what you want to basically start off with is basically making an arm movement from left to right or right to left, and I would say making a 180. I know some content creators say you should be making a 360-degree turn, but I think personally too much that is way too large for the sensitivity that you should be using. So we're just going to go with the 180 approximate degrees from left to right or right to left. So as we can see, if we try to do this here now, we kind of made about 2 circles. So because of that, I'm just going to go into here, go into settings. So I'm going to go lower to half. So left to right. Now, when you move your arm left to right, or your mouse left to right, it does not mean you go all the way and move your arm all the way to the side here and left to right. Unfortunately, that's not going to be great, which I'll talk about later on. You want to have a natural hand movement that's going left to right or right to left, doing this wave motion, essentially. So basically, I'm just going to stare at this heavy ammo just for reference, 180-degree turn. Go left to right. And as you can see, it is still way too big. So you should only be making 180-degree turn, not a bunch of circles. So we'll just go ahead and perhaps go to my actual sensitivity, which is 4. So if I go left to right here, as you can see, we can make approximately about 180 degrees. Now, I would not recommend setting up your sensitivity to be exactly 180 degrees, like something like this. And then you can't move, and you run out of space and you can't move your arm anymore. That's not something you want. If you do happen to do that, you are going to be stressing your arm out, to which basically, if you have an enemy behind you and you have to make a 180-degree turn, turn, this is all you can move. You're at the edge of your mouse pad, for example, and you got to turn even more. You're going to be straining your wrist and your arm. So what I would recommend is that whichever sensitivity you figure out to make the close 180 degrees, I would recommend you set it about 1 sensitivity higher. So if I go into my settings here and I go to the free sensitivity I had before, if I do a 180 here, as you can see, it's pretty much stretched the exact, like, to the edge of my mouse pad, but it's 180 degrees. But if, for example, if someone's like more to my right here and I'm trying to shoot them, as you can see, I'm straining my arm just to move my mouse. So I recommend a bit of leeway when you're calculating your sensitivity. So again, we go back to sensitivity 4. So left to right, 180, about maybe another 30 degrees, just for some leeway to move in. So that's why I recommend in regards to your setup. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is in regards to your ADS sensitivity modifier. This one has set up to 0.8, but this is basically essentially your sensitivity when you're aiming out sights. Now this is very personal preference to what you have, so what I recommend is maybe just going with the default 1 sensitivity and then playing a few games. I would also recommend maybe recording fewer games and just seeing how accurate you are with your shots. So for example, if you're shooting an enemy here and then you're aiming down sights and you're completely overshooting the enemy like left to right, then I would recommend lowering down your ADS sense. If you're having issues catching up with the other player, then you would increase it. So that is the section for setting up with the big mouse pad here. I'll just be moving on to the next session here if anyone is curious for setting up the small mouse pad here. Alright everyone, so this is the section part of the video if you are using a small mouse pad. Now unfortunately I don't have a small mouse pad with me anymore, I just have my big one here. So I'll do my best to imitate the size of a small mouse pad as much as possible, but I think ideally it's probably going to be about this size basically. So probably one you probably cannot put your entire arm on. You'll probably put something like this on the side of a desk. It's the best example I can put on here. So basically, for example, you're going to press your arm on the desk. This is pretty much your limited space that you're working with here. So which is still possible to still set up a good sensitivity here with, which I'm going to show you. So basically, I'm just gonna, like, for example, just go here and just set back my default sensitivity and everything. I already have a config file saved, so it's not too much of a big deal. So anyways, so in regards to using a small mouse pad, your movement is limited to mostly wrist aiming. Of course, you don't have this whole space or anything to move your wrist in, so because of that, your sensitivity is most likely going to be a bit more bigger than the others. But that is normal. So I'm just going to, for example, just set my wrist just on the side of the table just to imitate this as much as possible. But essentially, your movement is going to be something like this, essentially. So basically, what I recommend here first is just aim at a part of a wall here, and basically you want to move your wrist from left to right and form a 180-degree sensitivity. As you can see there, I basically just formed a full circle just with the default sensitivity just from there. But we want it to be approximately 180. It doesn't have to be exact, but something close. So since we saw that one was a bit low here, I'll go about 10. So go left, right, and that's pretty accurate. So we go again, so left. You can do this right to left as well, but I'm just more natural left to right. So left to right. And that's actually a bit more than before, but that's actually perfect what we're actually looking for sensitivity. So what I mean is that you don't want your sensitivity or your 180 degrees to be exact, like this probably, for example. You don't really want that, because the problem is that if, for example, you make a 180-degree turn to an enemy and they're not there, but they're slightly more towards like the A flag area there, so like right here, say per se, and you lock your wrist in this is going to be very awkward and very straining on your wrist for you to be going for this, which you shouldn't really be doing. So what I recommend is that when you do find the estimate 180 degrees or close to it, for example, go to your settings for your sensitivity, bump up your sensitivity by like 1, and then do it again, and you see 180 degrees. There are additional 30 degrees. This 30 degrees is kind of just some leeway, so you have some room to move your wrist and everything here too. So basically, if you had to make a quick turnaround, there we go, and look, you'll have a little bit of room to at least work with. If you restrain yourself to having the precise 180 degrees, you're going to be straining your wrist a lot when trying to do full turns, so really not necessary. So the last thing I'm just going to walk through here really quickly is in regards to the ADS sensitivity modifier. And this is very personal preference. So what I recommend is leaving this as default 1.0. Going to a game, I would recommend also recording the game as well. And then just looking back to see at your aim when you're aiming down sights, basically. So essentially just keep on your aim to see how your sights are staying on a target. If they're falling behind, to concentrate on the other player or enemy, then you might need to increase your ADS sense by a little bit. If, however, you are missing your shots by like a lot and everything, I recommend lowering it. For my personal preference, I go to 0.8. That's usually the one I go with, but again, this is wrist aiming, so this one's going to be a little bit different here for me. So, alright guys, congratulations. You now have a base sensitivity to start working with in Destiny 2. With your sensitivity now set, I would recommend playing a few games, and if possible, try to record yourself playing and going back for observation. See for your gameplay if you need to adjust your sensitivity at all. If you are perhaps, for example, shooting over your targets, you might need to lower down your sensitivity. If you are having issues keeping track of your target with your crosshair, you might need to increase your sensitivity a little bit. I would, however, not recommend dramatically changing your sensitivity every single match, no matter how good or bad that you do, as you won't be able to allow yourself to build up the muscle memory with your new basic sensitivity. I would recommend maybe perhaps giving yourself a week to try and test, and don't be so hard on yourself, of course, if you're underperforming in your related games. Well, that guys, that should be it for the video for today. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out my guide here. If you guys have any other suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you all guys next time. See you guys. Have a good day.